So thanks everybody for joining today's ETRO U. Birbal Sharma, our OH&S Lead, is going to take us through our pre-task planning forms, which is a critical part of our safety program. So Birbal, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Can everybody see my screen and hear me clearly? Good. Alrighty, we're gonna get going. As most of you guys are aware that we implemented our Salus program back in the October 2021, and most of you guys have been using this health assessment like on a day-to-day basis. So this session, the idea is some of our new employees who are not yet familiar with the Salus program. So they'll be able to use this platform, this training session, to complete these daily health assessments. So we're gonna get going on here. So before we start talking about health assessment, we need to know like what we're talking about. What is a hazard? So it's basically a condition or a thing which may expose a person to a risk of injury or any other occupational health and safety disease. How do we define risk? Risk is the chance, basically, or the potential loss based on exposure to a hazard, probability of an occurrence, or resulting in any other consequences due to an exposure to any of the hazards. What is a hazard assessment? It's basically an evaluation used to access, document hazards, prioritize them accordingly based on their hazard rating, and also determine appropriate hazard controls to mitigate those specific hazards applicable to our scopes of work. So basically, health assessment that we're talking about is going to be an ongoing health assessment. Basically, there are 4 types of health assessments, which is like pre-job, pre-work, which is like project health assessment, project-specific safety plan, job hazard analysis, and then ongoing is our pre-task or job hazard analysis. And for this job hazard analysis, we have developed role-specific job hazard analysis for each role in the company, which includes laborers, skilled laborers, carpenters, our site leads, superintendents, construction safety officers, as well as the office admins as well. So these ongoing health assessments, they'll have various names, but that's what we call them pre-task. But if you come across other contractors, they might call them job hazard analysis, job safety analysis, hazard assessments, FLHAs, FLRAs, hazard identification and risk assessments, hazard factor assessments, daily task analysis. So if you're referring to any of these names, it's the same hazard assessment we're talking about. So hazard assessment process involves 5 different steps. The first one is to identify what sort of task we're doing. Second step is potential hazards, which will be applicable to our scopes of work. Third one is ranking those risks. Fourth one is the control, implementing those appropriate controls to mitigate those specific hazards. Last but not the least, to train and educate our workers. So we're going to review these steps in detail, one by one. The first one is like identify what sort of tasks that we need to perform. So a couple of the questions that you're going to be asking your crew: what sort of tasks that we're going to be doing throughout the shift today? Are we performing any high-risk activities? Can somebody want to come off the mute, or they want to type in the chat what sort of high-risk activities we come across usually on a typical day-to-day basis? Anybody?
Confined space.
Yeah.
Fall hazard.
Working off sites.
Shipping concrete, working around cranes, rigging, operating machinery, unloading trucks, loading trucks, pouring concrete.
Wonderful. Those are all good answers. So these few categories that you guys just mentioned, they are part of high-risk violations from WorkSafe BC, and as well as we do have deadly sins part of our health and safety manual. Thanks for that. Next question would be like, are there any other workers in the immediate area, or if any other workers are performing such works around our scopes of work, how will it impact us? And last but not the least, who other workers are working around us? Are there any overhead hazard? Are there going to be any workers working below at the ground? Next one is identify the hazards associated with the scope of work. So this includes what sort of equipment or materials we're going to be working with throughout our shift, what sort of equipment or materials we're going to be exposed to while other crews are working with, what are the weather conditions, has the physical environment or the site changed since yesterday, what sort of things that have been changed since our shift yesterday. We need to accumulate all those factors. Last but not the least, we need to ensure that the tasks that were assigned to our workers, they are appropriately trained for that. Contributing factors and hazard categories. So contributing factors could be the different materials that we're using, types of equipment, environmental hazards, people, acts, and then hazard categories. These are a few hazard categories that we should be paying attention to. Chemical hazards, there are a few examples that I have included. Physical hazards, biological hazards, last but not the least, psychological hazards, which includes like harassment, fatigue, violence, mental stress, shift change work as well. Third step and pretty important step of our hazard assessment is risk rating. So we do determine the risk rating based on two factors, severity and as well as the probability. So this is the 5-tier training risk matrix that we use as part of risk assessments. So you can see the severity is rated by the elements A, B, C, D, and E, and then our frequency or probability is rated by the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is basically the severity is how severe it is, significant, moderate, minor, or negligible. And then likeliness to occur, is it like very likely, likely, possible, unlikely, or very unlikely? So that's how we rate a combination of severity and probability for our risk rating. So once we have determined the risk rating, then we're going to be implementing controls. Fourth step, implementation of the controls. We use this typical triangle, which is also called hierarchy of controls. There are 5 different steps or 5 different controls which we do use to put these controls in place. The first step is always the elimination, which means physically removing the hazard. So first of all, if there's a potential, we can eliminate the hazard. How we can eliminate the hazard? For example, if we're working with the power lines, those are overhead power lines, they're going to affect us at some point. So is there any way we can get hold of the utility owner and we can bury those power lines? For example, we use the 30M33. That's like the first step. If we can eliminate the hazard, they can bury those power lines, and now that will not be any other hazards for our scopes of work in the future. Second step, if elimination can't be possible, second one is replacing the hazard, which means substituting the hazard. For example, we're using a chemical which is like really dangerous for scopes of work. Is there any way possible we can use another chemical which will do the same job, but our workers will not be exposed to such harmful substances? So basically replacing the hazard. Third one is engineering controls. This means basically isolating the people from the hazard. This means like designed structures, controls that we can put in place, such as like zone limiting devices and other applicable options. Fourth one is admin controls. This is basically admin control is the way we do the work. We can change it with the administrative controls, which these such administrative controls are basically implementing policies, safe work practices, safe job procedures, or limiting the number of workers who can be actually exposed to such types of work. And last but not the least is personal protective equipment. This is like last resort and making sure we go through our hierarchy of controls before we decided to choose this last resort, which is personal protective equipment. Anybody has any questions so far? Good. Daniel.
No, all good. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Last step of our hazard assessment process is worker training and communication. So making sure we educate all of our workers on applicable scopes of work, like using these applicable safe work practices as well as procedures. We use this word a couple of times, safe work practices as well as procedures. Can somebody want to come off the mute and give me a couple of examples? What are safe work practices? What are safe job procedures? Any volunteers? Larissa, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, practices. This is instruction what we can do and what we cannot, and procedure. Usually, it's for high risk tasks and step-by-step instruction how we can perform task in safe way.
Thank you for that. And then a couple of individuals, they have typed in the chat as well, so which is totally correct. So what are practices? These are like general approach to do specific tasks, general conditions, general do's and general don'ts. For example, ladder safety, office safety, ergonomics, stuff like that. And then procedures, again, high-risk activities. And then these are step-by-step instruction to do tasks safely. Examples could be like confined space entry or lockout procedures, manual lifting, such examples. And then next step would be communicating all these hazards with all the involved parties, which includes our workers as well as any of the other workers who are working within the immediate area, or our work activity is going to affect those workers. Last but not the least, obtaining all the required permits, which includes any applicable hard works permit, any confined space entry permits, any cutting, coring permits, any fall protection plan, stuff like that. Anybody has any questions before we continue to the next slide? Okay, now we're looking at a couple of these Salus forums. Basically, how we're going to be starting to complete our pre-task. First of all, you're going to go to your forum tab on your Salus app. You're going to select a new form, which is pre-task planning form. Then you're going to go to this brings you this screen, which is like, for now, for the test project, that's what I have selected. It'll give you two options. Either you can create a digital form or you can upload a paper copy. Our first preference always is going to be, we're going to be using digital form because it's like easier to track, and then we're going to be saving some trees as well. So if just in case our app is not functioning, something is not working, that's the only time we're going to be using a paper copy and uploading a PDF form for any of the pre-tasks. Once you have selected digital form, and also before you're going to proceed, make sure you are in the right project. Once you have proceeded to create the digital form, there is no way you can change the project for which you're completing this as assessment. So this is one of the complete pre-tasks for the demonstration, submitted by the date, person who did that, project name, and as well as for the company. So similarly, who's going to be your crew supervisor? By default, the system will think that you are the acting supervisor for the crew. So if you are not the supervisor for the crew, you need to make sure you make that correction. That could be your site lead, that could be your site superintendent. So you need to ensure you have designated your crew supervisor. This is the exact location where you're going to be working to do this task, date and the time. This is an example of a couple of these descriptions of the tasks that we're going to be doing. Applicable hazards associated with that scope of work, hazard rating, and then controls. For example, we're going to be installing guardrails on a level 5 balcony. What sort of typical hazard we're going to be coming across? Fall hazard over 25 feet, overhead hazard, falling materials, manual lifting. Hazard rating is severe because fall from 25 feet, it could result in life-threatening injuries or potential death as well. So what should be our couple of controls? Following the safe work practices for fall protection, making sure we have site-specific, effective fall protection plan in place, establishing those control zones with the signage to restrict unauthorized worker entry. Then use of the power tools, pinch points, impalement, defective tools, dust, high noise, and then the risk rating, and then a couple of controls are tool inspection, safe use of the tools, tool tailoring, following the safe work practices for tool tailoring. Last but not the least, other workers in the area. Workers' exposure to any unprotected leading edge, overhead hazard, then the hazard rating is B2, significant, and then coordinate with all involved parties, restrict unauthorized worker entry, and post appropriate safety signage. This is just for the demonstration purposes. And for example, you are doing that specific task, and now you have to add another task. Here's the feature or the tab that you can use, add another row, and list out any other applicable tasks that are going to be taken on throughout the shift. Next section for our pre-task planning is work area evaluation. So now we're going to review what sort of other applicable hazards which might be applicable to our scopes of work. Whether we have walked the area, are we working around any live systems, any other utilities which are going to be applicable in case we're drilling into the stuff. Applicable safety data sheets are available on site. First aid attendant contact system is working, or we have the appropriate first aid available on job site. Do we have all the required work permits on job site? Then we have the safety data sheets, which are going to be applicable in case we're drilling into the stuff. Applicable safety data sheets are available on site. First aid attendant contact system is working, or we have the appropriate first aid available on job site. Do we have all the required work permits on job site? Evacuation routes are clear. Do we have the required PP? Is it a confined space entry? Is it a trench assessment is needing? Next section is our potential hazard checklist. So we have done our detailed description of what sort of hazard we're going to be exposed to, what sort of controls we're going to be implementing. But there might be a couple of the hazards which we might have skipped when we were completing that section. So here the system gives you, or the template gives you another chance in case we have missed any of specific hazards which might be applicable to our scopes of work. Here we can select those off. So a couple of these were applicable to our working at heights were high noise, falling object, manual lifting, power lines, housekeeping, pinch points, dust in the eye, floor openings, stuff like that. Next one is required PP and inspection. So what sort of PP that we need to do our specific task which got assigned for the day. So you're going to select off any appropriate PP that is needing to do the job. Any additional PP requirements, for example, we're doing any we're using any compactor, we're using any chipping gun, and then we're going to be exposed to any vibration. So such as vibration resistant gloves can be added here in case this can be a part of our PPE listed. And the next step is, have we inspected our PPE? Is it up to the stuff? And also completing applicable inspection checklist. In case we're using any fall protection gear, we are required to complete our pre-use fall protection equipment inspection checklist, similar to that one respirator inspection checklist, in case we're going to be using it to do our task. Next step is emergency preparedness. So this is our daily site-specific emergency response plan. In case who's going to be our lead first lieutenant, in case our site CSO is not there for the day, who's going to be our second person in charge, who's going to be the person to call 911. In case there's an emergency, who's going to be the person who's going to be getting hold of the emergency services. Person who's going to meet the emergency crew out at the front so they can get to the location of the incident in a timely manner. Next one, in case we have to do an evacuation due to any gas leak or any fire, who's going to be the person in charge of doing the head count at the muster point. Last but not the least, who's going to be the person who's going to be able to notify the management in a timely manner. I have seen sometimes people, they just list the one person to do all these tasks, which kind of is not feasible. We need to ensure that we're listing appropriate persons who are available on the site for this specific day. In case you don't have any idea who to list, ask your supervisor. Another benefit of the Salus platform is, for example, we have 4 or 5 guys doing the similar task, and site lead went ahead to complete the pre-task for the entire crew. He does not need to bring his phone to each people. He can just simply, using this feature, share it with the persons. He can just select a few of the names or whom he wants to share this pre-task template with, and then he can also allow them to submit this form for the review. Next one is worker review and approval. If you're going to see, it includes my signature, the date, the time, as well as my GPS coordinator. So we will be able to prove our due diligence in case something goes sideways, that we have completed these health assessments in a timely manner. And as per ETRO's policy, we are required to complete these health assessments prior to starting any work, any hands-on job, basically. Next step is, for example, throughout the day, you were assigned to do such tasks in the morning, but during afternoon, your supervisor is asking, stop whatever you were doing. Now you can start. I want you to do this. So instead of completing that pre-task from scratch, you can simply go to the edit feature here and then add any of the new scopes of work and see any applicable or any implemented controls are still effective. Here is the feature where supervisor will go in and review your completed form. He'll have 2 options. Either he's going to approve if everything seems to be in order and then put his signature, and then form will be completed. But in case you have not completed the form the way it's supposed to be, then he's going to disapprove your form. He's going to provide the feedback, what needs to be fixed, and then submit. And then you're going to get a notification in your inbox on Salus that something got disapproved, that you need to fix it. Sorry, guys, I'm just rushing a little bit, so we want to have some time at the end for the questions. I have also included the demonstration of the completed pre-task using the Salus. this video is like kind of 6.5 minutes long, so right now we don't have the time, but I'll be able to send this link over to the individuals just in case they want to see how it's been completed step by step. That's it. Thank you. Anybody has any questions?
Thanks, Birbal. Larissa had her hand up. I don't know if she still has a question or not, but
Yes, I do. Let's say we have completed pre-task by worker, and during the day he wants to add more tasks, and the form reviewed by supervisor and submitted. The worker allowed to add a task, even submitted and reviewed by supervisor, right?
Yes, they are still allowed to go ahead and then edit the pre-task and then add any applicable scopes of work. This is the beauty of the Salus system, is like you can also edit the submitted forms.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's say worker going to do task and safe work procedure or practice involved, and he should sign it. Is it any option add sign it form somewhere to the Salus?
Yes, you can simply go to our, I think we still have a couple of minutes. Maybe let me just demonstrate that for everybody. Can everybody see the screen, please? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to Health and Safety Manual. This is also available on your phone app as well. So you're just simply going to go to your Safe Work Practice. And then, for example, we want our workers to review the ladders one. They can simply go, sign it. After they have reviewed, they can sign. And then under the verified, you can see it got signed by me this time. And if you're going to click the document, right at the bottom, it says time, exactly the date, and signed by whom. Does that answer your question, Larissa?
Oh, yes, perfect. Thank you.
And after the session, in case anybody doesn't want to come up and speak right now, just reach out to me, send me an email, send me a Slack message. I'll be able to respond and we'll be able to share those resources with you.
awesome. Thank you so much for putting this all together, Birbal. And I encourage everybody to reach out to Birbal if you have any questions and need help with adopting this process. It really is super beneficial to ETRO to make sure we all do this the same way. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.